We have now ranked the dungeons and bosses of Twilight Princess, so now all that's left is the mini bosses. And I gotta say, I think some of them, heck, even most of them are better than the bosses in this game. So today we are going to rank them from worst to best. If you want to see the previous Twilight Princess rankings, I'll leave them in the description below, and without further ado, let's get right into this list. In last place, we have Phantom Zant. Now, while Zant is cool, Phantom Zant is not. I mean, he looks cool, but the fight itself is just so slow-paced. The majority of it is him teleporting around the room while you wait for him to stop. He'll also send out Twilight enemies to attack you as well, which can be a bit annoying. And what really sucks is you have to fight him twice in the Palace of Twilight. One was already bad enough. Overall, just not a really great fight for me, especially considered to some of the later fights, which are so much better. In 11th place, we have King Bulbin's first fight. Now, if you watch my Twilight Princess boss ranking video, you'll know that I wasn't the biggest fan of horseback Ganon. This is similar to that. I'm just not a big fan of fights that take place while riding Epona. This fight has two phases. The first has you chasing King Bulbin around while trying to whack him with your sword, while also avoiding the little guys on the pigs. Or I guess you could technically fight them if you wanted to. I always just avoided them. This part isn't too terrible, but the part on the bridge is what made this fight even worse for me. As a kid, I don't remember ever having trouble with this fight, but going back and replaying it recently, I kept getting knocked off the bridge. I don't know what I was doing wrong, but it was just not working for me. I did finally do it though. It also kinda sucks you fight King Bulbin on a bridge for a second time later, but with the bow it's so much easier. The fight itself is kind of cool, I just don't enjoy playing it that much. Next up, we have Aeralfos, and you'd think for one of the final dungeons we get a really cool mini-boss. However, this isn't the case here. The Aeralfos looks like a normal enemy, maybe slightly better. I was just hoping for something really cool from this dungeon. The fight itself isn't bad, although it does also have you waiting a lot, similar to Phantom Zant. You have to wait for the Aeralfos to fly around the room and raise his shield so you can grab him by the shield and pull him towards you. I'm just glad he doesn't summon more enemies like Phantom Zant does. Overall, it's just a pretty underwhelming mini-boss for this point in the game. In 9th place, we have King Bulbin's second fight that takes place right before the Arbiter's grounds. This fight is a bit better than the first fight, specifically because you're not on your horse here. I really like the entrance to King Bulbin here as well. You see his red eyes peering from the dark corner of the room as he slowly approaches you. It almost seems like something you would see in a survival horror game, and I just love it. Now the fight itself is pretty simple, just slash him a bunch while avoiding his big ol' axe. After a while he'll be defeated. Nothing too crazy really happens with this fight, but there's also nothing bad about it either, so I think this is the perfect spot for this fight. Also, it's kinda messed up that he tries to burn you alive after you beat him. In 8th place, we have Darkhammer. Now, this guy is cool, but personally, I would have liked to have seen an ice mini-boss, considering this is an ice dungeon. And again, this is another fight that feels a bit underwhelming. If you took away the ball and chain from him and gave him a sword, he would look just like a normal enemy. Kinda similar to the Aeralfos. Plus, the room here can feel a bit cramped as well with how small it is. I will say though, the fight itself is pretty fun, and it was a bit challenging, but that's about all I can say about this boss. Next up, we have the final fight with King Bulbin in Hyrule Castle. Now this fight is similar to the second fight, but a bit tougher. The reason I like this one more though is one, the setting is really cool. You're outside of Hyrule Castle and it's raining, which makes this fight super epic. Plus, I like that you get an ending to King Bulbin's story once you beat him. I said this in the dungeon ranking, but King Bulbin kinda felt like a rival here. Overall, this fight just makes for a great conclusion to King Bulbin's story. Now we're getting into the incredible fights. Here we have Deku Toad, and I feel like the early dungeons had mini bosses that were almost as good as the bosses themselves. Deku Toad is one of those. Honestly, I think he is just as good as Morpheal, and unique too. I like the fight kinda gives a throwback to Gomo from Ocarina of Time as well, where you want to look at the ceiling to find it. The fight itself isn't too challenging, but still pretty fun. Also, it can be really easy if you use bomb arrows. After striking his tongue for the first time, immediately shoot a bomb arrow into his mouth and you can slash him some more. Keep doing this and he won't even get a chance to attack. I think my favorite thing about this fight though has to be the music. I love that some of the mini bosses got a unique theme, and this is one of my favorites. And the arena you fight him in also is really cool. Just an overall really great fight. In 5th place is the Twilight Bloat. Now I'm probably the only one that put this mini boss this high, but I actually really enjoyed this fight. For one, this is the only fight where you are forced to use Wolf Link. Plus, it's a fight that takes place in the Twilight too, which is really cool. It's also a great way to end collecting the Tears of Light, which was a bit tedious. Taking out all my anger on this guy made it worth it though. Plus, the fight itself is pretty fun. It takes place in the water of Lake Hylia on some wooden platforms. You have to dodge the bloat as he charges at you, and then you can bite him. But my favorite part about this fight is the end when you use your charged attack to take out all his little tentacle things super fast. It's just so satisfying. And again, the music here is pretty good as well. It's just a great way to end the Twilight section and a good fight overall. In 4th place we have Dangoro, and I'm gonna say it. I prefer this guy over the boss of the Goron Mines. From the arena to the fight itself, I think it's just a bit better. Plus the armored up Goron himself looks really cool. Well, that is until you beat him and all his armor falls off, then he looks a bit goofy. But this fight has you slashing your sword at him, causing him to fall over and start to roll at you. You'll then want to grab him and toss him in the lava, and watching him bounce around as he hits the lava is so satisfying, and it fits well with the music here also. This fight is just so epic, and being surrounded by lava really raises the stakes. I also really like how the iron boots are utilized here as well, keeping you from falling off into the lava. It's so cool. I just wish the boss here was as good as this mini boss is. In 3rd place we have Darknut, and this is my favorite version of the Darknut out of all of them in the series. He's just awesome looking with his heavy black armor as well as his huge sword and shield. And the best part about this fight is watching his armor fall off as you deal damage to him, and once all the heavy armor falls off, he drops his sword and shield and pulls out his small katana-like sword and becomes a bit faster. And I will say this fight can be a bit challenging, especially if you haven't learned all of your sword abilities up to this point. And fighting 3 of these guys in the Caves of Ordeals can be a nightmare. That was probably the toughest fight for me in this game. But we're just talking about the Temple of Time version of this guy, and luckily there's only one of him. I also really like the arena you fight him in too. Fighting him in the Temple of Time with the big window in the back makes for an epic fight. This is also another mini boss I prefer over the dungeon boss, which makes sense considering this dungeon had my least favorite boss in this game. But overall a really solid fight that's super fun to play. In 2nd place, earning the silver medal, is Ook. This mini boss just does everything so well, and I almost put him in the number 1 spot. I don't even know where to begin with this guy. First, the fight itself is fun. He jumps around the pillars and you wait for him to throw his boomerang. When he does, you roll into the pillar to make him stumble, causing the boomerang to smack him. Now he can go over and stab him in the butt. And that brings me to my next thing, the design. Honestly, he has a pretty decent design, except for that big old butt hanging out. It's kinda hard to ignore it when it's in your face pretty much. But the funny thing is, this mini boss isn't even a bad guy. He has a parasitic bug attached to his head, which is kind of brainwashing him, I guess. And now that I'm thinking about it, it doesn't really make sense that we're stabbing him in the butt. Shouldn't we be stabbing him in the head where that bug is? I don't know. Anyways, this mini boss just has so much personality, and I really love that the item you get from beating him is the item he used against you, which only happens here and the Darkhammer fight, but I definitely prefer this one. And my favorite part about this fight though is the music. This fight has my favorite mini-boss theme with Deku Toad in second. It's just so good and gets me super hyped up whenever I'm fighting this guy. To me, this is a nearly perfect mini-boss fight, which is crazy considering it's the first one. If there's one thing Arbiter's Ground did perfectly, it's the bosses. My number 1 spot today gets none other than the Death Sword. This is hands down the coolest looking mini-boss in this game. It kind of reminds me of a Majora's Mask mini-boss. He looks like something you would see in the Stone Tower Temple. As soon as you walk into the room and see the sword tied up with seals over it, you just know something is about to go down. I just love how incredible this fight is, and you kind of use both Link and Wolf Link. You have to start the fight using Wolf Link's senses to even see Death Sword, kind of similar to a Poe. Then he'll fly around the room, eventually coming in for a strike. You can shoot him down with arrows or just slash him with your sword. It's a pretty fun fight, plus the arena you fight him in is pretty cool as well. And again, the theme here is so good. Maybe not as good as Ooks or Deku Toads, but still really good. Overall, a great mini-boss, which is why it gets my #1 spot. Well, there you have every mini-boss ranked from worst to best. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know down in the comments below, and be sure to check out the boss rankings as well as the dungeon rankings, which I'll leave in the description below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe. We have another video coming Monday, and I'd recommend checking it out if you're a fan of Paper Mario. But as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.